The London Times claims that the head of the People's Republic of China, Xi Jinping, would like the President of the United States, Donald Trump, to visit China at the beginning of September, precisely at the time when Beijing will be celebrating the anniversary of victory in World War II. As is known, the President of Russia, Putin, is also expected to arrive in the Chinese capital for this parade. And it is obvious that the head of the People's Republic of China would like to organize a trilateral summit in Beijing with the leaders of China, Russia, and the United States. This is not the first attempt by Xi Jinping and Putin to hold such a meeting with Trump. Previously, Trump was invited to attend a parade in another capital, in Moscow, on May 9th, when Putin was celebrating the anniversary of victory in World War II. And the main guest at the event was none other than the head of the People's Republic of China, Xi Jinping. Immediately after Donald Trump's victory in the presidential elections, discussions began in Moscow and Beijing about the possibility that the President of the United States could attend such a summit, and that it would be there that the future of the world would be decided, is to divide the world among the Russian Federation, the United States, and China. However, as is well known, Trump did not come to this parade in the Russian capital, and it remains unclear whether he would be willing to travel to Beijing to participate in such a trilateral summit, even if a meeting with the Chinese leader were to be agreed upon in principle. The point is that the beginning of September is precisely the period when the 50-day ultimatum issued by the President of the United States to Russia and its allies expires. If Putin is unable during this time to find a way to end the Russian-Ukrainian war, or at least achieve a ceasefire on the Russian-Ukrainian front, which is what Donald Trump has demanded from him since the very first day. After his inauguration, then, Trump promises to impose serious sanctions not only against the Russian Federation, but also against those countries that purchase Russian oil. China holds the rather unenviable first place on this list of countries. It is precisely China's support, specifically China's purchase of Russian and Iranian oil, that keeps the axis of evil and opposition to the democratic world, so to speak, operational. This enables Putin to continue his war against Ukraine and allows the Iranian Ayatollahs to dream of destroying Israel. And Trump knows this perfectly well. So imagining that at the very time he plans to impose a 100% tariff on China's purchase of Russian oil, he would also travel to Beijing is, to put it mildly, not very realistic. Of course, the situation could be different if by that time the Russian president actually makes significant concessions in the Russian-Ukrainian war and agrees to a ceasefire on the Russian-Ukrainian front. And if by that time Beijing and Washington agree on the main parameters of their economic relations, then it can be considered that the meeting between Donald Trump, the head of the People's Republic of China, and the president of the Russian Federation in Beijing will be a summit of reconciliation. However, a rather simple question arises: who will be the winner at this summit? Not Xi Jinping and not Putin, but of course Donald Trump. But in the minds of Xi Jinping and Putin, the winners in the confrontation with the United States should be them. They would like to see the current president of the United States as a junior partner at a carefully organized summit, which would leave Russia with geopolitical control over Europe and China with geopolitical control over the Asia-Pacific region. And for this, they need Donald Trump in the role of the person who lost the geopolitical competition. But Trump, of course, does not intend to lose the geopolitical competition. And if he does meet with Xi Jinping and even with Putin at the same time, he would want to have this meeting precisely as a winner, not as a loser. And it's worth noting that this is not at all the role in which the Chinese and Russian dictators would like to see him. So, is such a trilateral meeting even possible? In some distant future, I can imagine it, but to say that at the beginning of September 2025, the President of the United States will arrive in Beijing to meet with the head of the People's Republic of China and the President of the Russian Federation so far, that's something out of political science fiction. It is also clear, however, that by that time the Americans will be trying to persuade the Chinese to work more seriously with the Russian Federation in order to force Moscow to cease fire on the Russian-Ukrainian front. And this is for China's own interests, so that China can continue buying Russian oil without having to worry about the consequences of these deals. It is clear that it is in China's interest to maintain a certain level of economic stability. However, as is well known, Politburo member and Minister of Foreign Affairs of the People's Republic of China, Wang Yi, has already made it clear to the head of European diplomacy, Kaja Kallas, that China will not allow Russia to be defeated. Thus, even if 100% tariffs are imposed against China in the event that China will continue to purchase Russian oil, it is unlikely that Beijing will stop providing intensive assistance to the Russian Federation, which now may be expressed not only in the purchase of energy resources, but also in helping with the production of Russian weapons needed for use in the war against Ukraine. And this is also unlikely to contribute to the stabilization and improvement of relations between the People's Republic of China and the United States. Of course, it is not so easy to predict how the situation will develop over these 50 days. To predict, because Donald Trump is unpredictable, to predict, because we do not really know how prepared the Chinese are for a serious confrontation with the United States over Russian oil. We are already seeing that other countries such as India are now saying that they are ready to give up Russian oil if it creates economic tension in their relations not only with the United States, but also with the countries of the European Union and the United Kingdom. We see that the previous negotiations between the American and Chinese delegations after the introduction of Trump-era tariffs showed that the Chinese are not ready for a constant tough confrontation and are looking for some opportunity for compromise with the American president. And the same thing could happen this time as well. However, will such a search for compromises lead to a trilateral meeting along the Washington-Moscow-Beijing line? This is a very serious question, and for now, I think no one in Washington would give a positive answer to it, not even Donald Trump himself. Thank you, friends. Stay tuned, subscribe, follow me on social media, Patreon, Buy Me a Coffee, and Donatella channels, which help support and develop these resources. Use the sponsorship feature right here on YouTube. Wishing you victory and peace. Good luck.